You have 100 CR, right? You have to make a portfolio out of it.
I will invest 100 crores in 30 companies, almost 3.33 crore per company. F&O trading is a zero-sum game. Someone wins, someone loses. To be honest, I've never used Grow and Upstock because मुझे दिन रात अच्छा लगता था.
निखिल कामत.
If you have 25 stocks in your portfolio, losing money is actually hard. Unless you actually are hell-bent on losing money, penny stocks are failed companies which have low prices. Low prices do not mean low market cap.
You went to IIT Delhi, then you went to IIM Calcutta. You are living the typical Indian household dream, and now you're starting your own venture. How does that feel? Now we'll do something interesting and something different.
Sure.
You have 100 CR right now.
Okay.
You have to make a portfolio out of it.
Okay.
And we'll analyze why we invest in whatever places we have invested in.
Right.
So you have 100 CR. You can invest in Indian markets, you can invest in US markets, you can invest in commodities, whatever. 100
Sure.
CR to invest in markets.
Okay. So if I have 100 CR, I'll tell you my way of investing. Okay, I don't mind losing money. I am completely fine. Even investing in microcap SME companies. Okay, which is what I mentioned earlier also. And I don't mind taking 50% losses also completely fine. With this context, I will tell you my investing strategy, right? My goal is to maximize my returns,
Maximize your
but I'm
returns, yeah.
perfectly fine taking 50-70% losses
loss.
also, which I know is a part of the game. I will invest in 100 crores in 30 companies, almost 3.33 crore per company.
Okay.
Let's say if I like some company more, maybe I'll go to 5 crore. If I some company less, I will put in maybe 2 crore, but broadly 3.33 crore per company, 30 such companies. Now for each of those 30 companies, firstly they have to be low market cap.
Low market cap, can you tell me a range of market cap?
Less than 1000 crore.
Less than 1000 crores.
Yeah,
okay.
less than 1000 crore. I typically don't go beyond 1000 crore. Maybe if I really like a company, I can go to 2000 also, but I'll certainly not go beyond 2000. I would say 90% less than 1000 crore, maybe 2-3 companies above 1000 is fine. That's fine. So broadly less than 1000 crore companies. Now I will start. I have a universe of less than 1000 crore companies, right? So I will try to read all companies and I will start eliminating companies that are really bad. So I will eliminate some companies which have history of frauds, vagera, vagera, vagera. And I will also start selecting companies based on their growth plans.
Okay.
I will try to formulate a list of companies where I expect the maximum profit growth to happen. Okay. Now, how do I find companies where maximum profit growth is expected to happen, right? So I will understand their growth plans. And every company is mandated to give growth plans if they have to the stock market, right? They will tell you about any big order that they got, any fundraising plans that they have, any acquisitions they are planning to do, any other kind of growth they are planning to do, right? So they tell the stock market about all these things. So I will understand and interpret all this information and find a list of companies where I expect maximum growth to happen. Typically in SME companies, less than 50% growth is a bad growth according to me. I don't like companies where
less than 50% growth.
And by 50% growth, I mean 50% profit growth, which is typically 50% revenue growth as well, and year-on-year growth, right? So I expect my companies to do at least 50% growth. I don't like to go below 50%. Again, whatever I say in investing, there will be an exception to that rule, but broadly I will not do that. Maybe in some exception cases I can do that. If the valuation is super cheap, I can go for it. But typically, 50% is a minimum expected growth. that these companies will have. I will try to check their track record if they have delivered such a growth in the past also, and if the management has a good track record. That is important because I like that tells me of the integrity of the management, right? So high growth companies, good track record, which is there. I will check the valuations of those companies as well. One point which I wanted to make here was not every company is a good buy at every price.
Okay.
Right? A company can be a great company can be a bad buy at a certain price. For example, let's say a company is expected to do 50% growth in the next 3 years, but the price already reflects the 50% growth in the 3 years. And how does price reflect? There's something called valuation or price to earnings ratio, which is a measure of future growth of the company. Typically, that P ratio should be low.
How much, if you have any number in your mind?
Yeah. So I don't invest above 30 P ratio. 30 is the max which I do. In exceptional cases, again, I can go to 40 also, but 30
And what about valuation? Kitna valuation or kitna X valuation ho sakta hai company ka?
See, 30 is a typical number above which I don't go. Every company has a P multiple. It will be 20, 10, 30, 40, 50.
But 30 is for you.
30, less than 30 for me. There are companies which have 500 P ratio also.
Yeah.
Nykaa has 500 P ratio, I think, as on date.
I'm not
Eternal
sure.
has 1000 P ratio as on date.
Eternal to alag
Lenskart has 300 P ratio, 250 or 300 P ratio as on date. I don't go above 30. If a company has a P ratio of 500 or 1000, most likely it is actually overvalued because a lot of growth has already been factored in the price, right? So growth, if a company is trading at a very high multiple, that means your future growth is factored in the price. If a company is trading at a cheap multiple, the growth is not yet factored in the price, right? So therefore, low valuations is also important, and after understanding the growth plans, valuations, track records, and then I will check the red flags of every company, right? For example, there should not be any SEBI order against the company. There should not be any GST order against the company. There should not be any kind of like court cases
But you
going
go
on.
to all these details of all the companies which are below 1000 CR.
Yeah, so I will not do it for all the companies. I will try to I'm
Use
very good.
AI in this.
Not AI. I'm very fast at rejecting companies also, so I can reject companies really fast. For example, anything above 30, I will reject. Now, in less than 1,000 crore, let's say there are 2,000, 3,000 companies. A lot of companies will be above 30 P ratio, so I will reject them. I will reject every loss-making company.
And how do you get the right data of all these companies? Like we get the right data on Google and ChatGPT. What I'm trying to say is that because you have so much data of company,
Yeah.
how do you get it at one place?
Yeah.
Itne companies, itna data.
See, that is the exact problem which I wanted to solve through Sovereign, right? Because you can't study for all those 1,000 companies, right? You have to solve some heuristics, right? So, for example, for me, revenue guidance is a good heuristic. What is the management telling about its own growth, right? If the management is saying 5% growth, it will not deliver 50% growth, right?
Yeah, it will not.
Yeah. So, I will firstly check management's own guidance or own expectation of their growth. Let's say 500 managements are giving a 50% guidance that okay, we'll grow by 50% per year. Then I will start rejecting amongst them that okay, which of these are liar managements and they have a bad track record. So I will eliminate some of them, right? So revenue guidance is the first selection criteria that okay, check all 50% guidances, right? Above 50%, and then start rejecting them on some criteria. If they have done a scam in the past, I will reject them. If the valuation is high, I will reject them. If they are actually loss making today, but they're just giving me lofty dreams, I'll reject them. So then I'll keep on rejecting. The ones which pass all my criteria of rejection
You'll invest in them.
will become investable, right? So that's the logic that 50% revenue growth is a good proxy. Now there can be multiple such proxies. Anyone who tells me that I am expanding my factory by 10x, I will certainly study, right? 10x factory expansion is a big deal.
Big deal.
You're talking about 10x growth, right? Even 5x factory expansion, 3x factory expansion,
Manufacturing
I
is
will study.
very hard in this field.
Yeah. Another criteria which I will have is if you have orders which are worth more than 4x your current revenue, right? So because you have a big order book, right? 4x your current revenues. So you can actually derive growth from that big order book, right?
Yeah.
So 4x your revenues, 50% revenue guidance by the management, then 10x factory expansion, maybe a big acquisition that you're doing. I will select anything which is big and then start rejecting amongst them, right? That's the logic which I will apply.
And you will invest 100 CR in 33 companies.
30 companies, 3.33 crore each.
3.30 crore each.
Yeah.
So your model was firstly you'll put your capital 100 CR, then you will divide it in 2 to 3 CR per company, your metrics.
Yeah.
Then your first metric is market cap should be below 1000 CR. Then your second is should have revenue and profit growth 50% per year. Then thirdly, you will be checking valuation P ratio. P ratio according to you should be less than 30 for you to invest. And then you'll be looking at mismanagement, misalignment, red flags and yellow flags about SEBI, all these institutions. And then if a company has passed all that companies, then you will select 25-30 out of that and then you'll invest.
Right.
And it's a very big process and that's why you will get better returns. And now I know that why most of the people lose money because they're not ready to put that kind of effort. But would this be same if you had 1000 CR?
If I had thousands, so one more thing. Firstly, when you're talking about this capital allocation strategy, right? I'm a fairly advanced investor, so I don't think everyone should do this. I would say if you're just starting, don't adopt my strategy because it's
your strategy, guys.
Use your strategy and start with slightly more bigger companies because bigger companies are more
larger
mature.
Cap and then
Even you can start with small caps also, that's fine. But like, don't mimic my strategy because it's a fairly advanced strategy, I would say. Once you have some experience in the markets, then you will yourself realize that I follow a fairly optimal strategy. It's a fairly good strategy. It's practically copied from people who were successful before me. It's not as if it's my own strategy. People before me did the exact same thing. Okay, so that's one caveat. Now, I think to answer your question, if I will invest 1,000 crores in the same manner. Okay, now if I start investing 1,000 crores in 30 companies, then I will have to invest 33
33
crore
crores
in
per
each
company.
company. What I'm saying is that I invest in companies typically 500 crore in market cap, right? So 33 crore and 500 crore is 7% of the company I own,
You
which
own,
is a
yeah.
big chunk, right? I will not even get the supply of such a big supply,
Supply,
right?
yeah.
So of course this strategy is not fully scalable.
What would you do if you have 1,000 CR?
I will just increase the market cap of companies which I will
How much
invest
would
in.
you do it?
Maybe then instead of investing in 500 crore average company, I will start investing in 1,000 crore
1,000
average
average
company.
company.
Yeah, because then I own 3%, which is still fine. Owning up to 2-3% is not a big deal in stock market. You can. Buying 7-8%, 10% is hard because there's not so much supply in the market. So you will yourself raise the prices while buying, right? So you don't want to buy where you are the person who's raising the market price of that company, right? So therefore, if you have a larger capital, your market cap of companies will increase, and that's why as people become bigger, they start investing in larger market cap companies. Perhaps investing is a far better route to actually make money.
Can you tell what is the difference between trading and investing?
Sure, sure. See, trading is done with the mindset of rotating capital faster, and your mindset is that okay, maybe I'll maybe exit my position in maybe let's say 1 day, 2 day, 30 days, 50 days or so, right? So you enter the mindset of like exiting your position fast. In investing, your mindset is that if the company continues to do well, I will perhaps never sell it, or I will hold it till a very longer frame of time. So mindset changes. Typically, a lot of people use technicals for trading. Investing is done with the mindset of fundamental analysis, the typical Warren Buffett style, right? So you enter a business where you expect growth to happen, where you expect the business to grow their profits, and you stay in the business till the profits are growing. So sometimes you can find a business where profits keep growing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? That's where phenomenal wealth creation happens. If you hold a business for like 20, 30 years, that's where phenomenal growth, value creation can happen for you.
Can retail traders actually make money in India?
See, traders can make money, but you need to have the right knowledge, right? And firstly, I feel investing between trading and investing has you have a better chance of making money if you're an investor versus a trader. Even traders can make money, but then you have to be very, very skilled at it. I think if you are like completely unskilled, you will not make money. And of course, I would also say trading is harder than investing. So I would say that
But don't you think that a lot of people, or like in general, Elvis, who wants to be Warren Buffett at 90? Like it takes huge amount of, and that's why trading is so glamorized that you can make money in days or weeks or months
yeah,
instead of holding it for like 15, 20 years.
right, right. So that's a good question. I think if you enter a company when it has already become big, okay, so then you further, then let's say you are entering a company which has a value market cap or a valuation of 20,000 crore. Now this company is already fairly big, right? So for it to become a 1 lakh crore company, it will take quite a lot of time, and your alphas will not be that high, or your returns will not be that high. But if you enter companies faster and earlier, by earlier I mean when they're small in size, maybe 300 crore, 400 crore, 500 crore, when they're microcaps essentially, that's where you can even make quicker money with investing. But you have to enter companies and they have low market cap, 300, 400, 500 crore. It's essentially venture capital investing in the stock markets. Okay.
Venture capital investing in stock markets. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So venture capitalists typically invest in very small sized companies. You would see that the company would have a valuation of 100 crore, 50 crore, right? So these are small market cap.
They're angel investing.
Angel investing or venture capital, that money typically goes for the business, and the business will try to grow its business through that capital, right? If you invest in a small company in the stock market which is listed, it's essentially the same thing which a VC is doing. And a 200, 300 crore market cap company has a big chance, if that company becomes big, then you make a lot of money. So I think microcap investing is a smart way to make faster money. Of course, it's still not that fast. You make money in 3 days. You cannot make money in 3 days, right?
Yeah.
So that's impossible. But maybe in 3 years you make very good returns. In 2 years you become 10x, 20x, which are very good returns, right? So microcap investing is a very good alternate for trading, which people don't know. And all big investors, whether you talk about Warren Buffett or Rakesh Jhunwala or Ashish Kacholia, at a point of time they're all microcap investors. So they started with small market cap companies. In fact, retailers also want to invest in small market cap companies, but they confuse it with something called penny stock investing. Okay, penny stocks are failed companies which have low prices. Low prices do not mean low market cap. They are very, very different, right? So you enter young companies, young companies have low market caps. Even companies which come on Shark Tank or Idea Buzz or any other of these shows, right? They're all small cap or micro cap companies, very small size companies. So you make outsized returns when you enter companies very young. Okay, that is a way to make money slightly more faster than maybe mid cap, small cap, large cap investing. But still, it will not be that fast that you make money in 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, because that is not possible. If you are thinking of making money in 10 days, you will lose money. As simple as that.
And can you elaborate about micro cap, mid caps, larger cap for our audience? And also, what do you do? Can you give me specific differences between penny stocks and micro cap companies?
Sure, sure. So I'll take the second question first. Penny stocks have low prices. So 1 rupee, 2 rupee, 3 rupee is the price of the stock. It does not tell you about the market cap of the company. Let's say a 1 lakh crore company fails, okay, and it becomes a 1000 crore company. Sometimes the price may become, it will come 2, 3 rupees, right? But that's a failed company. The price of the company does not tell you anything. Microcap companies are low market cap companies, which have a valuation which is quite low. Now, what is valuation? I'll just tell valuation in very simple terms. Valuation is the amount of money needed to buy the full company. Okay, Reliance has a market cap of almost, I think, 20 lakh crore or something. So if you give 20 lakh crore to all investors of Reliance, then Reliance is yours tomorrow. Okay. Lenskart has a market cap of 70,000 crore. So give 70,000 crore to Piyush and all the other shareholders of Lenskart, and Lenskart is yours, right? So these are large companies because you need 70,000 crore to buy complete Lenskart, or you need maybe 90,000 crore to buy full of Swiggy. But there are companies where you can buy the full company for 150, 200 crores, right? These are very young companies. So young companies are microcap companies, and penny stocks are typically when the prices are low, which tell you nothing about the value of the true value of the companies. And in most cases, penny stocks are failed companies because they were bigger at one point of time and they failed, and then the stock price collapsed.
Stock prices collapsed.
Exactly.
And what were the market caps for the mid cap, large cap, and small cap?
So the typical thing is that the first 100 companies are large caps, top 50 are Nifty 50, then next 50. Then from 100 to 250 is mid cap. Then 250 to I think 500 or 750 is small cap. And then beyond that, everything they call micro cap. But even so, I think the 750th company will have maybe 5,000 crore market cap or something. So everything below 5,000 crore technically becomes micro cap. But even in microcap, there's a 4,000 crore company and there's a 400 crore company, right?
Difference.
And they're very, very different, right? A 400 crore company will give you a 10x return when it becomes a 4,000 crore company, right? So the earlier you enter, the better. What I personally do for myself, I'm mainly an SME investor. I only invest in SME companies. My typical investing range is I don't invest above 1,000 crore. And these numbers which I said, I think broadly they're right, but I don't remember them correctly. So you can just double check with Google.
That. But do you think actually anyone who is investing alone can make money? Because when you look at HFTs and quant trading firms in the world like Jane Street, Citadel, in India, Graviton Research, they have a big infrastructure. They have all this data, access to the markets, and like huge chunk of team working for them. On the other hand, we have retail traders in India who just want to make money in a day in futures and options or in investing as well, but they don't have that kind of data. So can they actually make money? Because when we look at the other side, it's not possible for one person to compete with a big team of people.
So trading, if you are talking about F&O trading is a zero-sum game. Someone wins, someone loses. Investing is not a zero-sum game because let's say it's a good company which became a 1 lakh crore company from a 100 crore company. So anyone who invested in that company would have actually made money unless they were just stupid enough to sell it at a loss at some point of time, right? So investing is not a zero-sum game. People can make money in investing. Now, when you talk about HFTs have a very different model. HFTs buy and sell in seconds. So they will buy at 10:01 and sell at 10:02 or 10:03.
Or even less than
even less than that, right? So their position sizes, their entry exits are very fast. So they are pure traders. You don't compete against HFT. You just do typical fundamental analysis and you just invest the Warren Buffett style. The purpose of HFT, a good purpose which HFT serves is creating liquidity in the market. That's it, right? So don't sit on the other side of HFTs without an algo. Just do typical Warren Buffett style investing that makes money. And even in investing, invest in 20 stocks. You will find it hard to lose money if you are very diversified. I'll tell you, if you have 25 stocks in your portfolio, losing money is actually hard. Unless you actually are hell-bent on losing money, that okay, I will invest in bad companies, then only you can do that. But investing in a fully diversified manner it's hard to lose money that way.
Especially in long-term returns, because a lot of people leave that point of time.
Exactly.
And as we agreed on one particular point is that HFT will always dominate this because they have this infrastructure and all, and FNO will be a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
So for any retail person or any person should mainly have a focus on investing rather than trading, because
Correct.
and all that glamorized thing about trading of making money in one day and all that thing.
Yeah.
You have to understand that if you are making, someone is losing, someone is making, you're losing.
Yeah.
And majority of the cases, retail traders lose
Yeah.
because of the structure of HFT and market creation which
Yeah.
HFT serves.
Correct. And see, in the short run, the one with the better algorithm wins.
The one with the better algorithm. Yeah.
Retail traders don't have an algorithm. They
will
playing
use
with the
technical
mind.
analysis to trade.
They are using the mind. A mind can't compete against an algorithm. See, just think about it. Magnus Carlsen is the world's greatest chess player. When he plays against a computer, which is Stockfish, he loses. He will lose because Stockfish is completely efficient. It exactly knows what's the best move at that point of time, right? So any man can't compete against a machine because machine is like, they can do lots of calculations in seconds, right? So don't fight machines. You will lose. Use machines to your advantage if you can. Build algorithms if you can, and then play against people who are stupid enough to fight against algorithms. Don't fight against algorithms. You will lose.
Is investing easy?
It's not easy. I think it takes time and it takes effort. And of course, one more thing is that it's not taught anywhere. So unless you know the basics of investing, how do you even invest? 99.9% people in India don't know how to invest. It's really...
And some people make money out of that because they have the knowledge.
Yeah, if you have the knowledge, you can make money, I think. But you need to have the right set of knowledge. Then that's the way you make money. But you will still have to spend time to research companies. You will need emotional maturity to exit companies and things go bad, right? A lot of people don't have the courage to exit companies at a loss. Now, let's say something went horribly bad in a company that you invested in, and now the business is doing badly. So now the mature decision is to exit the company because business is doing badly, right? But you will have to make a loss. And for that, you will have to be very clear in your mindset that making losses is completely fine. But people don't have that mindset. So that emotional maturity is not there. And secondly, people don't even research. I think the sad part is no one is researching before investing in companies.
But
right?
don't you think after AI, researching has become more easier and everyone has the access to knowledge?
I don't think again, because see, 2 points. Firstly, the data which AI is using is corrupt data, right?
Okay.
Because a lot of PR happens in the world of finance, right? And a lot of PR happens in podcasts also. There are tons of paid podcasts out there, right? How do you know what is paid information
and what is not paid, yeah.
and what is not paid information, right? I have not paid a penny to you, so this is a completely
unpaid.
this is a completely unpaid podcast, right? But you can pay money to people and get featured in podcasts, right? Same with data. How do you know that the data you are consuming is paid data or unpaid data? And how does AI even know that, right? Because you don't know.
AI just gives the data what he has.
Exactly, right? So availability, data toxicity or data biasness is a big problem in AI. And one more problem in AI is that, let's say AI becomes perfect. Okay. Now let's say you ask, hey AI, give me 20 best stocks to buy. AI will give you 20 best stocks. AI is perfect. AI will also give me the same 20 best stocks.
And that 20 stocks will then
those 20 stocks will become a bubble, right? In investing, the patterns of investing change if everyone knows the pattern. In physics, gravity remains the same, whether you know it or I know it, right?
Yeah.
In investing, if the same 20 stocks are given to everyone, those stocks will become a bubble and they're no longer the best stocks to invest, right? And they will not even know what happened.
Yeah.
So theoretically, there is a big problem in investing. In the world of investing, you can't make perfect AIs because you will just end up creating bubbles in the stock market.
But everyone can't have right knowledge, because as you've mentioned, if everyone has the right knowledge, so everyone will trade that stock.
Exactly.
And everyone will lose. So trading or investing will always be for that 1% who are deeply in the markets and will be able to make money. And they 99% other will actually lose money even in long term, because if everyone has the right data and everyone investing in the same company, market will move in different way.
I don't think so. I think in investing, there are always multiple players in the market. I have to think through whether the same phenomena which happens in trading will happen in investing also. But from what I have seen, a lot of investors make money. Now, why they are making money? Because typically asset prices, Indian stock market is growing, right? Maybe it's a 4 trillion market right now. It will keep on growing. So a lot of people do create money. How much money you create depends on the information that you have. Investing is typically a game of information asymmetry. People with better quality information take better decisions. People with bad quality information take bad decisions, right? So investing is typically a game of information asymmetry. I think it is not a zero sum game from what I have learned so far. But I will perhaps need to do deeper thinking on like but I have seen that a lot of good investors make money. Now, how is everyone making money? Because it's not a zero sum game. The asset prices itself increase over time. But yeah, if everyone has access to perfect information, then you're posing a very complicated scenario. I don't know what happens in that case.
But because what I believe is that if everyone was to be a good trader, then good trader wouldn't exist. So I think the key element, as you mentioned, to separate a good trader from bad trader is knowledge first, and then the temperament to hold that for a long period of time, because generally people don't have that.
And one more point actually, now that you asked this question, and it's a good question. Even if you have access to the same information interpretation is different for different people, right? For example, a glass has water, right, which
Half
is half
full, half
full, half
empty,
empty,
yeah.
right? How do you think about it? For example, I'll give you an example. A company is expected to grow 40% this year, but the company said we will grow 100% this year, and they downgraded the forecast to 40%. Now, is it a bad thing or a good thing? Because 40% growth is a good thing, but downgrading from 100% growth to 40% growth does lead to some sort of unethical behavior by the management, right? So now, what part of this information do you pay attention to? Is it 40% more important, or is a downgrade more important? And now this is very contextual. You may interpret it differently. I know that management has typically been right in the last 5 years, but at this time they just aired. So I will choose the management that okay, 40% is fine. But you will say that okay, maybe the management is being unethical now, right? You can
never know.
you can take an opposite bet. So that's why even with the same information, people will not take the same decision. I think that's also important. So that's why perfect information does not lead to perfect actions by rational market
So
participants.
then it is luck, because now we have perfect information. But even if perfect information has different sets of positive and negative, so it is luck.
Some luck is there, but I think let's say you buy 30, 25 stocks, right?
Then you're diversified, and then you minimize your risk.
Eventually, luck gets normalized in the long term. You have to play a game where your odds of winning are high, right? Sometimes, even in poker, you can have a very bad hand and you still win, right? Because of luck. So, in the short run, luck does play a role. Someone can make money by luck also. But I think if you are smart enough and if you understand odds of winning well enough, you will play games where your odds of winning are high. In the long run, skill matters.
Skill matters.
And that's why investing is a game of skill, not a game of luck in the long run, because you play multiple such games. You're not just playing a single game, right?
And I want to ask you, do you only invest in markets, or your portfolio is diversified in real estate, in different businesses, venture capital, and all that?
Sure. So again, I am purely a markets guy because I'll tell you some important things about stock markets. I think Indian markets will grow. That is my belief. I can be wrong, but that is my belief. I think there's a 90% chance India will grow as a country, right? So therefore, India is a developing country right now. There's no reason for me to believe India will not grow, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, Indian equities offer me a would offer me great returns provided I pick good companies, right? If India was a mature economy, maybe I would not be adopting this strategy, right? But India is not a mature economy. It's a young developing economy. So therefore, Indian economy will grow, and therefore equities should offer me great returns. Therefore, I'm fully in stock markets. I don't do venture capital investing because venture capital is illiquid. There's no
liquidity in your hand.
If I want to sell a bad investment, I will not even get a buyer. In stock market, if I have a bad investment, trust me, you will have bad investments, okay? You will have buyers even then, right? Because there are people, it's sad, but there are people who will buy bad companies also because they don't read it, right? Now, of course, ideally a bad investment should very quickly go to zero because there should be no buyer for that investment, right? But there are buyers right now. And to your point on HFTs sometimes add liquidity in the market. They buy bad companies and they distribute it, right?
Yeah.
So there are buyers for bad companies also. And now the point is, since people are not informed, this is sometimes end up buying bad companies, which is kind of stupid, right? And one more point on this allocation strategy, right? If you're investing in 30 companies, trust me, in India, you will encounter one scam in every 30 companies you invest in. Okay, so you will have to be prepared for it because people lie all the time. People lie, right? How do you trust what the management is saying? Everything is correct. Okay, you can look at past track record. You can do a lot of checks. You can check that okay, no SEBI investigation in the past, but maybe the person changes his mind and become unethical suddenly, right? You can't predict that, right? A scam is very simple. Transfer the money from company's account to your personal account. That's it. It's a single bank transaction. That's it. If your business is failing and someone becomes unethical at that point of time. I can't guess that, right? You can't guess that.
You can't guess
So you will have to ensure that you have a lot of companies in your portfolio, because you will encounter scams for sure in the stock market, right? So that's important. That's a very important point as well.
You mentioned you should diversify your portfolio, but you have not diversified. Like, don't you think it will be better that if someone wants to diversify not only across markets but across real estate or any other investment, not solely depending on real estate, not solely depending on stock markets, because if tomorrow something like Corona came, .com burst, anything such happens, at one particular point of time, whole market will be down, and you have zero liquidity at that point of time.
Yeah, so I personally believe that in the long run, Indian markets will continue to go up. So that's why I am fully invested there. Now, if you, this is a very high risk strategy again, like you said, it may not be suitable for everyone. But I truly believe so. I am invested in it, and I do suffer a risk. If
You
things
do
go
suffer,
bad,
yeah.
I will lose money, right? I will not lose money because I've already made a lot of money, but I will lose money from the top, whichever is my top portfolio, right? So I think, of course, that's a risk I'm running. And equities have risks. People should understand that equities have risk. Gold, gold may not have that much risk which equities have. Gold also has risks, by
Gold
the way.
also has risk,
For example, if someone develops synthetic gold tomorrow,
yeah. Then
the gold is gone. Synthetic diamonds are already there in the world.
lab-grown
Lab-grown
diamonds.
diamonds, right? If someone develops synthetic gold tomorrow, I don't think that's possible. Maybe I don't know how science works. I mean, science can become complicated, right? You just create some chemical reaction which develops synthetic gold, right? Now then everyone's gold becomes worthless because someone will flood the world with a lot of gold supply, right? And a lot of supply will lead to depressed prices.
Depressed
So
prices,
even gold is not risky, but of course chances
are there
less,
that
right?
is risky.
Real estate is limited in the world. So again, real estate falling are less. But okay, that's a risk you run. You run risks with every asset class. I am fine by the risk with the risks which I run.
So do you think there are not a lot of asset classes to invest?
So there are 5-6 asset classes.
Majorly.
Commodities is one asset class. Equities another asset class. Fixed income
Is
another asset
FD
class.
Cargo.
New age investments like crypto is another asset class. Maybe these four are real estate is the fifth asset class, right? So these are 5 asset classes. Each asset class has its
On
own
risk
pros and cons.
and what you want to take. Yeah.
Equities is the highest risk asset class, but it's also the highest return asset class. Within equities, I'm always fully diversified, but I am perfectly fine taking the risk of equities per se as an asset class. Yeah, that's about it. I think commodities are a bad asset class. They don't give much returns, and you still have a lot of risk. Actually, I don't invest in commodities at all. Fixed income is fine for a certain case, because let's say you have a big capital and you want some fixed flow of income coming in, then fixed income as an asset class is fine. But yeah, not a big fan of that asset class as well.
To be a good investor, you need good data, and that's why you have started Sovereign, right?
Exactly. See, Sovereign, the problem you mentioned, right? Understanding data and getting all this data in a very structured format is hard, right? How do you formulate a list of companies which have given 50% guidances? Then how do you understand the track record of those companies? And my point is, data is infinite in the world, right? You need insights. Data is commodity. Insights are valuable, right? This mic standing on top of this table is also data, but I can't use it in my investing decision, right? It's just irrelevant data. Birds flying in the sky is also data. If there are 4 birds in the sky, that's data, but it's not relevant for investing, right? So data is infinite there. It's infinite in the world. Even company data is infinite. What matters is insights. I'll give an example. There was a company which I was checking like maybe 5-7 days back. It was looking really good. Company is growing profits fast. It was in a good sector. IVF was the sector. It was a recent IPO actually. IVF sector, and a lot of good things are there for the company. But they had a contingent liability of 45 crores, which means that if they actually lose a case, you will end up paying for 45 crores as taxes, which was the sum of the 3-4 years profits. So that's a big risk, right? But that's an important insight, that this company has a 45 crore contingent liability, which they will end up paying if something bad happens, or if they lose the case. Now, I would not want to take this risk. I don't care, right? I would find better companies. But that small data point is a key insight, right? And this is just one of the points in a 400-page DRHP, right? So DRHP has tons of data. But this crucial insight that this company has a very big contingent liability is a problem, right? So therefore, insights matter. Sovereign is an insight platform. Because we feel that data is commodity. Tell me the 5 most important growth points of the company, right?
And that will give you.
Yeah. So even in Sovereign, if you open, you always have the top 5 growth triggers for any company, right? Which we have created after reading the entire growth plan, which we think are the most important points. Even the definition of most important changes from person to person, right? That's what my analyst would feel that it's an important point for them, right? And typically our people are trained, so they are able to figure out the right important points. But if you ask AI to create 5 important points, even two AIs will create different 5 important points, because what is important, what is not important is
It's
different for
subjective
different.
to them.
Exactly.
But for this, you need to write a good prompt.
You can write a good prompt, but there are a lot of exceptions also, right? See, stock market is every company has a different type of data. You can write a prompt which optimizes for a certain sector, but then that will not be valid for another sector. If the number of exceptions is also quite high, then rules don't matter a lot, because the prompt will always have exceptions, right? So we tried writing some prompts and all, but it gave a lot of exceptions also. Now then we will start doing exception management, which is it's the same thing, right? So therefore, if you're doing a lot of time spent doing exception management, you might as well create the data yourself, right? So that's the whole point. I do believe that there may be a very perfect prompt which does exist, but that requires a lot of deep knowledge of understanding the exceptions also really well, and it is practically translating everything that you have in your mind on paper, which might be hard. So therefore, I think perfect prompts can be hard in certain cases, right?
And when we talk about knowledge, you've
Yeah.
talked about insight, you've talked about data. Let's say I am nobody, I don't know anything about markets, and I want to understand and how to invest in markets. So can you give me steps or frameworks of how do I invest in markets?
Right. Right.
I am nobody, I don't know anything about markets yet. I want to get into markets. I have a good capital and I want to invest. How do I look at it in steps?
Sure. So I'll explain you in very layman language right now, but of course the nuances will take time. So just think of the answer as a very basic
Basic
approach,
approach. Okay.
right? Now, if you have to invest in markets and you don't know anything, firstly you'll have to select a broker for yourself, that which broker you want. I like Zerodha. Zerodha is the app I use. You download Zerodha, you get your account created. I think it's fairly fast. And once your account is set up, then you can start investing in the stock market. Now, once you start investing, right? Firstly, let's say you have a large portfolio. Let's say you have a portfolio of 1 crore, okay, and you have zero market experience. So obviously, you should not invest 1 crore in the markets on day one. That's illogical, right? Because you don't know. Maybe you're a bad investor, right? You don't right now know how good or bad investor you are, right? So I would say that maybe select with an amount which you're comfortable losing even 20-30% of that amount, right? Let's say you have 1 crore. If I had 1 crore, I think 10 lakh I can start with, or maybe 20 lakh I can start with. I'm fine losing 4, 5, maybe 20-30% of 20 lakh, which is 5, 6 lakh,
4x, yeah.
which is completely fine, right? So 20% of your savings is what you can start with. What I started with also. In fact, I would say I started with maybe 10% of my savings, not more than that. Okay. Now you start investing based on a certain framework, right? The framework I'll tell. But again, you have to ensure that you have to assume that you might lose money, so you will be slightly bad in the beginning. Okay. So you have 10 lakhs because you have 1 crore capital. So 10 lakhs is what you start with on day one, and you try to deploy that across companies. Now again, you have a very diversified approach. Maybe deploy 10 lakh in 25 or 30 companies, whatever that number is. I always suggest 30, but even 20 is fine. 20,
But for
30.
10 lakhs also, you're telling me to deploy in 30, it is like what, 30,000,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. Always be fully diversified. Like even if you have a small capital or large capital, always
Fully
be fully
diversified. So
diversified.
we'll have the same approach of investing.
Yeah, maybe if you have 10 lakhs, maybe 20 is fine. Okay, don't go to 30, 20 is fine. But if you actually look at the there's a proper definition of risk. If you have 10 companies, I think 60% risk is gone away. In 20 companies, 90% risk goes away. So that there's a proper mathematical framework about it. So less than 10 you can never do, because you're at 10 also you're carrying a lot of risk. At 20 you're fairly decent, right? If you have a smaller capital, 10L, 20 companies is fine. If you want to be really aggressive, 15, but don't go less than 15 because you will be running a lot of risk, right? So 20 companies, like you said, 50,000 per company is what you have to invest. Now your framework is clear. 1 crore capital you had, 10 lakhs you want to invest, 50,000 per company in 20 companies. Now you go about starting investing in companies, in those 20 companies. If you are very risk averse and you just want to observe markets, take 20 large cap companies which are fairly mature and try to invest in them based on their growth plans. Just study basic growth plans and try to invest in large cap companies or mid cap companies which are fairly stable. You will not lose money, you will not make money, you will just get a hang of markets. Assume you will just do time pass, you will just observe markets for 6 months, and in 6 months you'll be practically, maybe you made some money or maybe you're flat, doesn't matter. But it's purely for learning. It's a very risk-free approach, right? Kind of risk-free approach. After that, you go in those 6 months. I expect you to read growth plans really well and understand growth plans well. And don't be limited to large cap, mid cap, small cap. Read all kinds of growth plans which are there. What are the components of a growth plan? I'll tell you component by component. What are the components of a growth plan? First component is your revenue target if the company is giving, or the revenue guidance is what the company is called. Revenue guidance is typically the sales target that the company has. Okay. As an investor, I would never go less than 20% sales target. 15-20% is the minimum, preferably not less than 20%. In the beginning of the podcast, I talked about 50%, but that is SMEs. SMEs grow fast, so therefore I talked about 50. But since you are a new investor, maybe 20%, don't go below 20%. Sales target is one component of the growth plan. Okay. The second component of the growth plan is the lever for growth. Why the growth will happen? Maybe because the company is doing some factory expansion. Maybe the company has a big order book. Maybe the company is doing some acquisition or something of that sort. Try to understand that what is driving the growth of that 20%. Check the track record of the management, that how has the management performed in the past also, right? If everything tallies up, let's say a company is promising 20% growth, the track record of the management is amazing. They delivered what they told last time, and the steps that they're telling you will lead to 20% growth. Then it is perfectly tallying from everywhere, right? Past track record is good, the management commentary is good, and it is actually leading to 20% growth. Then you can go ahead and invest in such a company after checking for any corporate governance issues which would have been there in the past, right? Now I'll give you an example of this. There is a company which is saying that we will generate 50% growth this year. And the same company told me that I will expand, it's a gold manufacturing company, and they said that I will expand my gold manufacturing capacity by 70%. Now, if you are expanding gold manufacturing capacity by 70% and your guidance is 50%, you're actually committing lower than what you're actually doing, right? So it tallies with each other, right? You try to marry the growth plan from different sides, right?
The components are sales targets and lever.
Yeah, sales targets, levers, and track record is also kind of the components of the growth plan, right? So these three things you try to understand and try to marry with each other. They should all talk to each other. And if you find such a company where all three are talking to each other, then you go ahead and invest in such a company. $50,000 is what we discussed initially. You put in money and you do this same approach in 20 such companies, right? And then you see what happens. Valuation is also important. You will have to understand valuations. Like I said, low P ratio, don't go above 40. That's the max P ratio, should go above, so low P ratios as well. Bunch of money is there in the market, you just track it and see what is really happening. Now, even if you do perfect studies, the world is not perfect. Some of those companies will not be able to achieve the growth that they said, right? And a company has to declare results every 3 months. So in results, you were expecting 20% growth, but let's say there's a degrowth which happened in the results. So then you know something bad is happening to the company. You understand the reason for that degrowth. Typically, if you see a bad signal that growth is not happening, what you expected, you sell the stock. So you made a portfolio on day one after understanding the growth plan. You invested in 20 companies, 50K each, after understanding their revenue targets, their levers of growth, their track record, and the red flags, and having good valuations. Now your money is deployed in the market. Now some companies start posting bad numbers. You sell those companies and you replace the bad ones with some other good ones. That's the broad approach you take. If you take this approach, it's a fairly straightforward approach. Even if you go wrong in this approach, you will not lose a lot, right? You will take it chota mota, but you will learn a lot.
What is the typical timeline for this approach when I'm starting investing, and what is the typical timeline I should hold these companies at least?
See, if the company is, let's say you found out a company which had a 50% growth and it delivered on that growth, so you will see that in the numbers of the company. Your profit will grow by 50%. So now, since the profit has grown by 50% and you entered at a good valuation, you would have made some money. So that company would have already given you some profits. You do the math again of the growth plan after 1 year. Once the 50% growth has been delivered. If the company is again promising 50% growth, then you're completely fine again. You just keep invested in this company. So till the growth is there, you keep on staying invested. After every interval, you
3
check.
months or 6 months?
See, you have to check every 3 months because every 3 months data aa jata hai. So if the 50% growth is on track, you chill, you don't do anything, you're completely fine. 1 year is typically the shortest time frame for which you need to hold, provided the growth is coming. A growth 3 months में नहीं आएगा तो आपको बेचना पड़ जाएगा, right? लेट्स से आपकी कंपनी ने 3 महीने में खराब नंबर्स दे दिए, तो आपको 3 महीने में बेचना पड़ जाएगा.
So there's no specific interval.
Exactly. There is no such thing as long-term investing. You hold till the company is growing.
And then you sell it, yeah.
Once the company stops growing, you sell it. There's also another approach to selling. If you get a better investment.
Then
These
you
are
sell
the only
and-
two approaches, right? And there's a third one, which is kind of similar to the first one. If you encounter a scam in a company, which automatically means it will stop growing.
Then you'll have to obviously leave.
Then you'll have to sell, right? So selling has 3 approaches. You get a better investment, or the company stops growing, or something really bad happens with the company, like some corporate governance issues, and then you sell it, right? So you keep on tracking every 3 months. If everything is fine, you keep on holding. The moment you encounter a problem is the time you sell, right? And you will keep on encountering problems. I would say you would have a new portfolio every 3 years, because only 1 or 2 companies will continue to grow, or 3
Another
companies.
will be,
Everything else gets churned.
So you'll be booking profits like maybe every month, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 1 year, according to the company.
Yeah.
And then you keep on growing.
Yeah. So the minimum duration is 3 months, right? Because 3 months some data comes. Let's say out of 20, 16 grew, and 4 degrew, and 4 degrew badly. So you sell those 4, and you're now left with 16. Plus you replace those 4 with some other 4. And mind you may have booked a loss in those 4 because it didn't go as per plan, right? So now you have new set of 20, 4 were bad. 6 month results come. Now let's say those 4 also did well. Maybe some other 4 out of these 20 posted bad numbers. So replace those 4, right? Just keep on replacing.
Keep on replacing, and you will get, and that's how you book profit.
Yeah.
And for all this data analysis, you have built Sovereign.
For all this data analysis to understand the growth plans, is we have built Sovereign. Because you need constant growth plan information, right?
Yeah.
And you also need constant flow of bad things which are going to happen, which are happening in the company, right? Because sometimes people can miss bad things. So we don't miss those bad things. We will always tell the bad things also, that okay, these
are the bad
things
that
are
happening
happening.
the company.
Now it doesn't say that we can predict all scams. We can't, right? Because if a promoter does a bad transaction, we will know only once SEBI finds that out, right? Because no one knows that in the market, right? So it's not as if we can tell every bad thing that can happen in the future. We can't. Some things we will also come to as a surprise, right? But obvious things we can. For example, some things are very obvious, that a company is promising 50% growth, but it doesn't have employees. So then it is stupid, right? We can check the operations, right?
Yeah.
A company is promising 50% growth. It is saying we have a big factory, but the factory does not exist on Google Maps. Then mostly the company is
It's a
fraud,
fake company,
right?
and it's a fraud. Yeah.
If a company is saying 50% growth, I promise, but they did a scam 10 years back, that's a fraud, right? We check the 10-year track records of companies, 20-year track records. Future ones we can't. It's impossible.
It's impossible for anyone to track.
No one else can. And that's why I always say that you will always encounter such future frauds, because you don't know at the time of investing which such company will be there, right? So you have to plan for that, and that's how you diversify. And that's the reason for creating Sovereign, to give you unbiased, authentic data, which is
You went to IIT Delhi, then you went to IIM Calcutta. You are living the typical Indian household dream, and now you're starting your own venture. How does that feel?
I think it's good actually. I think starting your own firm is always good. I think the way I started was, once I accumulated sufficient capital, where I realized that I don't need a salary. That's when I started.
How much was
Sovereign.
that capital, if you're comfortable sharing, or any amount close to that?
I would say maybe 4-5 crores is a good enough capital in India. If you have that number, you're fine, right?
You're fine.
And second point, I'm good with money, so I know that my 4-5 crores how to grow my money, right? So my point was that, okay, see, IIM doesn't matter, to be honest. I think degrees don't matter, skills do. Skills are important.
And IIT and IIM graduate is saying this.
Yes, skills matter.
Degree doesn't matter, guys.
Yeah. See, I think in 10 years time, according to me, MBA will become completely irrelevant.
Okay. I think it's had started becoming irrelevant.
Yeah. And a lot of people are saying, not just me. I think Nikhil Kamath also said the same thing. A lot of people are saying MBAs are becoming irrelevant, because firstly, MBA curriculum is very, very old. It's not needed in today's world, right? And secondly, instead of an MBA, do a CEO's office role. You get
chief of staff
role, right? You get paid to actually do an MBA, right? And you get skills, right? So skills are important. Degrees are not. No one cares about degrees. Engineering, I would not say it will become completely obsolete, because engineering builds up math also, and maths is important for a lot of things. But MBAs will completely become obsolete. And even if you acquire skills without having degrees, it's completely fine. But yeah, I think the good part about IIM is that you get good jobs, which at least that time you used to get good jobs. So which helped you build capital faster, and then you could start.
And how much when you started Sovereign?
In Sovereign, I put in like only 4-5 lakh rupees initially, which I took out in like 2-3 months time. So
2-3 months time only.
yeah, we are profitable from the day one itself. So in fact, I would say I put in maybe 2-3 L, which was taken out after
And
2-3 months.
when you talk about like you took out the profit, so people were ready to sign up within your first and second month for this thing, for the
Correct,
services.
correct. Huh. Within, so I understood the channel really well. Any finance investing related product can be built on Twitter. Twitter has the smartest investors. Okay, so Twitter and in general for any field, Twitter will have the best kind
Best
of investors or people of that field. The skills are high on Twitter. So we started on Twitter. We found people who felt the same need as us, because this is a latent need. Sovereign is a latent need. You don't know that you are missing good information. See, you are surrounded by information, so you don't feel the need for information, but you're surrounded by biased information. So therefore, you have a latent need of unbiased quality information, right? Which a lot of people realize now. And 3 years back, again, not many people realized. So, but Twitter people were smart, so they realized this latent need of good unbiased information, right? So they were our first customers. They started paying for the product from day one itself.
And how did you market it? Like you were posting completely on Twitter, or you just reaching out random DMs?
I was posting content on Twitter that time in 23, and though that content people liked quite
it.
a bit. So I think that content was good. It got a lot of initial customers who are still there with Sovereign. I think a lot of initial customers will always love Sovereign because they are really, really strong investors actually. So yeah, that's how we got the initial traction.
And later, after 2-3 lakhs, did you invest more money, or like you were on the track
No,
of
we never invested any more money.
more than 2-3 lakhs?
That's so. In fact, it was taken out also. Sovereign always ran from its own profits. Even right now, we had kind of, well, like I said on Shark Tank also, we kind of had a rough year because of bad stock markets and bear markets. But we still are completely fine because we had a good profit buffer which helped us. So yeah, profit buffer is which is
Profit
helping
buffer,
us.
you really had good. And what were your marketing strategies after your Twitter content?
See,
Because you have to get clients for financial products, which is very hard to get in India.
yeah. I think Twitter was a good channel initially. We also do social media marketing. I think people know that they don't have a platform for research. Okay, they don't have places where you have good insights. So it's a need which some many people realize now also. Of course, you need to reach out to those people. I think social media marketing is the channel which we typically use. We have never done any digital marketing because digital marketing is fairly expensive, and I also feel that I don't want to pay money to like Google and Facebook. I would rather pay money to Indians, right? So social media marketing is better. We did social media marketing. We worked with some influencers, even generic influencers, people like Nitish Rajput. We have worked with. Nitish is really big. So social media marketing is what we did, and we just made people aware about our product, that we are a company which offers insights. We offer data about growth plans, red flags, order books, acquisition plans, and so on and so forth. That's what Sovereign is about. Yeah.
And what about if you were to build a financial product right now, or you tell me gaps on which anyone can build financial products right now?
Gaps on which you can build financial products. No, that's a good question. I will have to think. See, I can give you gaps in general. Finance may it's too specific. One gap which I feel is that experiential marketing in India, experiences market will in India will explode.
Okay.
Okay, so I feel, for example, I I don't have avenues to get premium experiences in India right now.
Can
right?
you elaborate premium experience as in?
There's this company called Bingetown on Shark Tank, which came on Shark Tank, right?
Yeah, they do this setup and all.
This setup and all of. I think they are doing it for mass market, but similar kind of experiences
Can be done in premium markets.
Can be in premium markets, right? That's a clean white space. Someone should build for it.
Space,
it's like it's solvable. There should be a market for, let's say, hiring personal trainers. I want to hire a personal trainer who comes to my house and like teaches me, right? So that's a clean market. No one is hiring. No one is building for it. Clean white space. I think you can build there. So these two come. These two.
What about finance? What about finance and AI? Because this is so glamorous industry. People want to enter this.
See, finance and AI. See, we are solving one gap of good data, right? Good data is a gap which we are solving. Finance or which are the problems which are there?
Because there are a lot of enough brokers right now. I think 4-5 years ago, brokers were like on the top, and now we have enough brokers. So I don't think brokerage is not a gap.
Yeah. See, broking, mutual funds, I
But,
don't
but do you
think
think brokerage can be a gap after a point of time, as because markets are growing, people are becoming more aware and more investors are coming?
right.
Do you think?
Brokerage will not be a gap. There are enough and more people. See, brokerage is a very competitive market also, and it's a commoditized product again. Matlab, at the end of the day, ठीक है, Zerodha offers you a great experience, but ठीक है, Grow is also fine. मतलब,
Grow is also fine and
Grow is
Upstox
also
is also
fine.
fine.
Upstocks is also fine, right? Of course, I love Zerodha, but to be honest, I've never used Grow and Upstocks because मुझे Zerodha ही अच्छा लगता था.
Nikhil Kamath.
So I think brokerage, I don't think there's a gap there. Gap in financial products, it's a hard question. I have to it's not coming
It's
to
not
my
coming-
mind right
yeah,
now
okay.
because I keep on thinking of such
Yeah,
ideas,
yeah.
but right now in the spot I can't think of.
So you have hired a lot of people in your life. I assume you have fired as well.
We don't fire actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't fire. Our hiring is slightly harder. So we typically try to ensure that the person does some internship before joining us,
And then it converts for full time.
then we check that. We have done very rare firing. We have done it, but it's very very rare. I would say, see, firing can be done, and firing is not the right word actually. The right word should be
Letting them go.
not letting them know, but there are some people whose skill sets don't match
Match with
the
your
skill
skill.
set that you need, right? That's an important thing. So some of those things can happen that they have a different skill set than what you need, so then it is not good for them in the long run to be there at your company, right? So we have done that where we felt that we got some people where the skill sets didn't really match the skill set which we needed. And even in our notice period policies, we have the best in class notice periods in India. We have given 4 months, 5 months,
Okay.
even beyond notice
Yeah.
periods, which is pretty good
Pretty good,
actually.
yeah.
And sadly, we never got it in return. We got a notice period of 15 days,
Yeah.
which was not good.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I don't mind. But I think ideally it should be 2 ways because we are fairly
Yeah.
generous with our notice periods. But yeah, I don't think firing is a good term. Skill set
Mismanagement
non-alignment
is
is
a
a
And
better
you're a
term.
team of
25 people right
25
now.
people do all the
Yeah.
thing.
Even in my BCG time, even in BCG, trust me, I always tried to save people as much as possible. I think in BCG, there were people for whom I had written bad evaluations. I didn't want to write them. My bosses told me that write those bad evaluations, so I can't bypass my bosses. I tried to write as much glam जितना अच्छा कर सकता था मैंने करा था, because I told them that change the area in which this person is working, because if you
That might work.
that might work, because I worked in a very mathematical area जहाँ math बहुत चाहिए and I am good with maths. If someone who's not good with maths comes to my area, they will struggle.
They will struggle, yeah, definitely.
So send them to an area where maths is not a prereq and maths is fine, right? Now BCG works in a different mindset. So they will let those people go. And it's not as if it's because of one person that someone is going. They had an average track record of people who were eventually let go. But I never tried to. I was very. मेरी कोशिश रहती कि firing से जितना बचा सको बचा लो, because I think it's hard. And BCG is slightly, I think Indian capitalism is slightly more ruthless because they will not give you good time. थोड़ा fast करेंगे कि जल्दी जाओ. BCG was still fine. BCG फिर भी time देता था 3 महीना. बट स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम में बहुत रूथलेस है. वो तो कुछ नहीं देंगे. कुछ तो ये भी बोल देते कि कल से चले जाओ,
अभी निकल
हाँ अभी निकल जाओ. तो वो तो बहुत रूथलेस है वहाँ पे.
India में, yes.
Yeah.
So I'll give you scenarios. I'll tell one liner and you have to tell me, would you hire this person or fire this person?
Okay.
Extremely loyal but average.
Fire.
Who argues you but usually is right?
Hire.
Someone with ego but extremely talented.
Fire.
Someone who's trying to replace you.
Hire.
Will hire? Why?
But in my company, how do you replace me? You can't replace my equity structure, right? You will be smart. If you're trying to replace me, you're smart, is what I'm assuming, right? If you're smart, you're welcome in the company. If you're smarter than me, completely fine. I don't mind. I'm not insecure. So you can't replace the equity structures, right?
I had this personal question that do you think there is a scope of because as you mentioned, financial education is not in India. So there is still scope for people to build in financial education segment in India?
There is, and we are also building in that segment.
In financial education, yeah.
See, we realize that to understand insights, you need to have education and literacy.
पहले डेटा बताना पड़ेगा, फिर insight, and then you will be able to do that.
तो पहले आपको समझ आना चाहिए कि insight होती क्या है, उसका interpretation में क्या करूँ. तो education ही नहीं है तो insight interpretation क्या करोगे, right? So literacy is a bigger market, and that's why we're building for that market as well. I think that's a gap.
Last question. One piece of advice for me.
For you, I think you are doing great work. I feel that there are a lot of people who are doing podcasts, but I don't know people who are doing unpaid podcasts, right? That's a good thing. And if you keep on doing this, you will become big because you're the only one who's doing it in the market, right? So I think you should keep on doing the good work. It's good for you also. from a learning perspective, because you'll get to meet a lot of smart people. And if you get branded as the only unpaid podcast in India, people will actually
actually
want to
watch
come to you, right? So you will command a lot of interest eventually. It's harder for you, but it will be good for you in the long run. Yeah.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank
Loved
you so
it.
much. Yeah.